much, they're now critically endangered. And to add to the problem, those that remain are becoming wary of human contact. Our correspondent Jonah Fisher joined a research boat to try and find out why.
There. One of the extraordinary things about the Irrawaddy dolphin is that it can fish cooperatively with the fishermen. So these two men from a nearby village have come out to show us how it's done. You can see them signalling to the dolphin by splashing in the water, tapping on the side of the boat, making sounds with their mouths. And the way it works is there are a group of dolphins out there, and they are chasing fish towards this boat. Jumping fish just there. The nets are cast into the water, and in the confusion, the fishermen get their catch, and the dolphins get some of the fish that are desperately trying to avoid that net. Okay. The net is cast. A stick. So it could be that either the fish aren't here or the dolphins aren't committed enough today. We caught nothing, and Ong Tin, one of the fishermen, told us that it wasn't just a bad day, but another sign of a souring relationship with the dolphins.
We used to be like a family with the dolphins, but now that family relationship is upset because of the growing amount of electric shock fishing. When we make the tapping sound, the dolphins used to come to us. Now they don't come close because they're scared of being trapped by the electric shock fishermen who make the same tapping sound.
Back on board the research boat, Joel Lathane from Myanmar's Wildlife Conservation Society has just been sent some pictures on his mobile phone. They're pretty grisly, of two dead Irrawaddy dolphins that have washed up in the last couple of weeks.
We investigated, and these dolphins died due to electric shocks. There are 3 reasons why dolphins die here: aging, electric shock, or being trapped in a fishing net. But these dolphins are only 1 year old, so it's not age, and there are no injuries from a net. So obviously the cause of death is electric shocks.
As the sun sets over the river, the boat's crew kick a cane ball to each other on the beach. It's Myanmar's national sport, Chinna. On the top deck of the boat, I speak again to Han Win from the Department of Fisheries. Do you have the resources that you need to stop this?
In the old days, they used bamboo poles attached to wires and a battery that were called shock rods. They'll put 2 together and catch fish like that. Now they are using bigger batteries and better equipment. They work in big groups, and when we patrol, there's just 5 of us. So we are outnumbered and have no chance to arrest them.
The small dolphin population in the Irrawaddy River is fragile, but still just about viable. What's been lost is trust, and a very special, almost unique relationship between man and mammal.
That was Jonah Fisher. You're listening to Global News, the best stories, interviews and on-the-spot reporting from the BBC World Service. If you'd like to comment on this podcast or on the topics covered in it, do please send us an email. The address is globalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. You can also post a message on the BBC World Service Facebook page. That's facebook.com/BBC World Service. As Europe tries to defend itself against any further terrorist attacks, the residents of northeast Nigeria have suffered thousands of deaths caused by Islamists of Boko Haram. Earlier this month, as many as 2,000 people were reportedly killed when Boko Haram razed to the ground the town of Baga and surrounding villages on the shores of Lake Chad. The Nigerian armed forces have shown themselves either unwilling or unable to contain the Islamist insurgency. And following a request by the regional West African grouping ECOWAS, the next session of the African Union in Addis Ababa will now include a special session on terrorism, at which West African leaders will seek authority to create a multinational force to fight Boko Haram. The announcement was made by the Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama, who's the current chairman of ECOWAS. We managed to get through to President Mahama on a poor quality phone line. How many countries did he hope would take part in such a force?
It would depend on the discussions at the AU, and that would determine how many forces and how many troops are needed and which countries would participate. But if you ask me off the top of my head, there is already a consensus in the region on Niger, Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Benin. So we can start from there.
Does this proposal arise from an acknowledgement that Nigeria is unable to cope on its own?
It's more difficult for the individual countries to cope on their own with Boko Haram. That is becoming fairly obvious. And I believe that a regional force will be a better alternative than leaving the countries on their own to deal with it.
Because the residents of northeast Nigeria might reasonably ask why it has taken so long for Africa to create a force that is capable of confronting Boko Haram.
There has been an effort to create a force. The countries of the Lake Chad Basin Development Authority came together and agreed to create a multinational force. That force was supposed to be based in Baga, which was overrun recently by Boko Haram. And so I believe that we need to create a better conceptual plan and an operational plan so that this is more effective.
And would you be hoping for assistance from outside of Africa?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm sure that there are many countries that would be willing to support this. Already, Nigeria and Cameroon have been getting assistance from France, from UK, and from the United States. But I believe that if we are to organize this properly, like we have done with AMISOM in Somalia, then we must get an African Union mandate.
And in your view, is the only way to deal with Boko Haram to defeat it militarily, or do you see any scope at all for rehabilitation of the insurgents, or indeed a negotiated end to the conflict?
I guess that at this point, a military solution is the most viable option. If you ask the authorities in Nigeria, there have been subtle attempts to try to negotiate a settlement. In addition, I remember that the government of Nigeria offered an amnesty, and all that has been unsuccessful, and innocent people keep getting killed every day. And so for now, I guess the military option is the only viable option.
The Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama talking to Julian Marshall. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, says he'll provide $2.5 billion to help stabilise the Middle East. Mr Abe was speaking in Egypt on the first leg of a regional tour. So where is this money going? A question for our Asia-Pacific editor, Michael Bristow.
Well, we don't know the full extent at the moment because Mr Abe has just begun his tour in the Middle East. But $200 million is going to countries which are fighting Islamic State militants, or more specifically, it's going to those countries which have to accept refugees, and there are several million of those already, so helping them. But most of the money is going to go towards development and boosting the economy in the Middle East. So, for example, in Egypt, it's already been announced that $360 million worth of loans will go to upgrading the electricity power grid in Egypt and also building an airport. So it's that kind of project.
And when he says stabilising the Middle East, what exactly does he mean?
Well, I think the first thing to mention is that him talking about stabilising the Middle East in the first place is quite big news. Usually we were all used to the Americans or the Europeans talking about stabilising the Middle East, not so used to hearing a Japanese Prime Minister talk about that. So it's part of really Prime Minister Abe's push to really make Japan a more bigger presence in the world. So when he talks about stabilising the Middle East, what he sees is massive potential, economic potential, and he wants Japan to help foster that. What he says is that when you've got neglected schools and unemployment, that breeds discontent and helps radicalisation of people. If you can help people become rich, you can help the place develop and make it a more peaceful region.
Now, of course, we've heard a lot about Japan's economic problems. Can it afford this?
Yes, in a word. We do hear a lot about economic problems in Japan. It is having its problems. It's had 2 decades of stagnation, but it's stagnated at a very high level. Its economy is worth $5 trillion, so loans amounting to $2.5 billion is something it can afford.
Asia Pacific editor Michael Bristow. The head of the organisation which chooses the Oscar contenders says there should be greater diversity among nominations after only white performers were nominated in the acting categories for this year. Keith Adams reports.
When the nominees for this year's Oscars were announced on Thursday, social media and rights groups leapt on their lack of diversity. Feelings on the issue were heightened by the absence of the actors and director from Selma, a critically acclaimed film about US civil rights. But Cheryl Boone Isaacs, the first black woman to be president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts, said she was proud of the choices made this year. She said the Academy, which votes for the nominees, had made strides to diversify its membership, and she looked forward to seeing greater cultural diversity among the nominees in the future. She also pointed out that Selma had been nominated for Best Picture, which she said would showcase the talent of all those in its production. Many are critical, though, at the speed at which the Academy is broadening its membership. The University of California's Dr. Darnell Hunt co-authors the annual Hollywood Diversity Report.
The fact that minorities are underrepresented, I mean, that's what we see year in, year out because of the way the industry is structured, the way the Academy celebrates a particular type of work because the membership is overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly older. Unfortunately, until the Academy the makeup of the membership changes, we probably won't see any wholesale changes in the way these nominations come down.
A survey by the Los Angeles Times in 2012 found the Academy was 94% white, mostly male, with an average age of 62. It has 7,000 members and there is no requirement to retire. So building in more diversity could take some time.
That was Keith Adams, and there's a lot of response to that story on our website. You'll find it at bbc.com/news, and then go to the arts pages. Now, this may seem an ill-advised question to ask on a radio podcast, but are you getting enough sleep? 2 separate reports this week here in Britain emphasise the value and beneficial effects of sleep. A team at Sheffield University, working with colleagues in Germany, have discovered that young children who have regular naps develop better memories. It may have implications too for some of us who are rather older. Meanwhile, police forces around the UK are reportedly taking part in a study to find out if sleep breaks or naps during working hours can help staff work better and perform more effectively, especially those working overnight. Here's a sample of some expert opinion on the benefits of sleep and napping.
There's a lot of research with adults showing that when we sleep, we're clearing out some of the knowledge of events that's happened during the day, and it's helping us move information from a temporary store in our brain, which is the area called the hippocampus, to a more permanent store, which is the area called the neocortex. And so this is what's really happening during the sleep process, is we're transferring this information to a more permanent store.
I could lay my head on a piece of lead and imagine.
Quite a bit of research has been done on this, showing whether with or without naps. And there may be a psychological effect as well, because you think that your employer is taking care of you to some extent, and rather than make you press on and be more productive, which is not always a good idea. So a nap, although you're losing about 20 minutes of maybe production one way or another, you're gaining much more in reduction of error. We know for certain that naps can actually reduce errors and mistakes due to sleepiness, and so that's another benefit.
I'm so sleepy.
If you're sleepy, then and you get your head down, head back, right, a quick ziz, maybe some earphones or something just to reduce noise outside. And obviously you've got to have someone to wake you up and make sure they don't get fired because you sleep for too long. But it's very effective, and it actually increases productivity, and people get quite miserable when they're very sleepy. And a nap like that, and especially the organisation allows you to have a nap like this, is good for morale, and it also reduces absenteeism.
Most parents would think that the best time for children to learn is actually when they're wide awake. Our findings suggest that actually it's that time before they go to sleep that's particularly valuable in terms of their learning.
Soon I'm gonna slip away.
Immediately before you actually have a nap, have some coffee or caffeine, and that takes about 20 minutes to kick in. So there's a great opportunity to have the nap. So the nap after 20 minutes, the nap and the caffeine kick in, and you have a double effect, which can be very, very useful.
I'm so sleepy.
I think you should have a napping area if you do it properly, and maybe have a quieter area where you can have a more comfortable chair. And it might seem to you slacking with your workmates, but it is worthwhile and it's productive. It should be done properly rather than having to crouch down or put your head in your desk, which is very stupid, really.
Sleepy, yeah.